This is Midwest Wyoming. This is where I lived from 6th grade until high school graduation. It's the place I claim as my hometown. There's not much to it. Only about 400 people lived here when I grew up. It's fewer now. But Midwest Wyoming has two claims to fame. One is oil. The other, forever changing the course of football as we know it. Midwest seems like a funky name for a town. It is. Whenever I tell people where I'm from, I always have to add the town of in front of Midwest. Otherwise, people ask, oh, Midwest Wyoming? What town? The name comes from the Midwest Oil Company. Midwest was a company town, one of several that sprung up around the Salt Creek oil field in the late 1910s and early 1920s. Midwest became the center of one of the great light oil fields in the nation. Several thousand people lived in the area. Today, Midwest only has 12 streets. 9 of them are named after prominent oilmen. The field has produced more oil than any other in the Rockies, and it's been that way for 50 years. The oil is so plentiful that the U.S. Navy decided to set up an oil reserve there. They called it Teapot Dome. It almost brought down a presidency. But that's a story for another time. This is a story about football. And the story of how a high school team in the middle of an oil field in the middle of nowhere, Wyoming, changed football forever. You could even draw a line from what happened here in Midwest in 1925 to the national institution the NFL is today. Even Super Bowl Sunday can trace its roots back here. This is Moses Field. It's Midwest softball field today, has been for years, but back in the day, just beyond what is today the center field fence, was the location of the Midwest High School football field. The Oilers started playing football modestly in 1923, but they quickly realized they had a problem. No one was coming to the games. Almost all the men who lived in the area were either working in the oil fields or working in support roles for the oil field. They were working during the day, 7 days a week. They couldn't take time off for a high school game. That oil had to come out as fast as possible. So what was a team to do? Well, how about change the course of history? On November 19th, 1925, the Midwest Oilers did just that by hosting the nation's first night high school football game. You know, Friday Night Lights? Yeah, that didn't start in Texas or Ohio or Florida. It started right here with a team barely 2 years old and a town with a problem it knew how to fix. You see, Midwest knew power. The Salt Creek oil field was the first electrified oil field in the nation. You can read all about it on the highway memorial marker right outside town, right across from Moses Field. In town, you can take a trip to the Salt Creek Museum. The museum is a local treasure, set up in the town's former hospital. It houses all kinds of early oil field artifacts. Out front, it also has a tribute to the nation's first night high school football game. It reads, simply, First Lighted Football Field, 1925. And on the inside, the game ball. Now, there is some controversy surrounding Midwest's claim. The first night football game in the country did happen more than 30 years earlier. That was in Mansfield, Pennsylvania, where Mansfield Normal, now Mansfield University, played, get this, Wyoming Seminary School. But the game only lasted 10 plays because the lighting wasn't good enough. And Westville, Illinois also makes a similar claim to Midwest, and they've got a sign you can actually see from the highway. Westville High hosted its first night game in 1928. But Westville also claims the game is the first football game held under permanent light fixtures. After all, to make the game happen in Midwest 3 years earlier, the oilfield workers put up a single light pole powered by one big 2,000 candle power bulb. Then they added 15 1,000 candle power bulbs around the field. Oh, and the open gas flares of the surrounding oil field also helped light the field. They painted the football white for better visibility, and they invited Natrona County High School from nearby and much bigger Casper, but a town similarly dependent on Salt Creek oil. Casper became the rail and refining hub for all that black gold coming in from the oil field. And Casper's nickname became the Oil City, even though in Casper itself, not an oil well to be found. But I digress. On that November night, about 1,000 people made their way to what is now Moses Field. They watched as Natrona beat Midwest 20-0 in the nation's first night high school football game. So what's the connection between Midwest and Super Bowl Sunday? Well, in 1925, the NFL was still feeling its way. Pro games were usually played sporadically throughout the week, much like high school games of that time too. Usually all forms of the game competed for attention on the weekend, usually Saturday. But with artificial light came real possibilities. High school games gradually shifted to a consistent Friday slot, with most schools adopting lights at some point in their histories. The concept of Friday night lights was born. When Midwest moved its football field to its current location in the 1960s, lights were a necessity, not a luxury. Colleges, meanwhile, seized on Saturdays, the only show in town, and the pros, well, they took Sunday and turned it into 4 months of a weekly national obsession. And Super Bowl Sunday is nothing short of a national holiday. That 3-day pattern of high school, college, and pros wasn't possible without lights for the Friday night skies. Now, you could argue that this was probably a case of simultaneous invention. Multiple people were discovering the same thing all at once. Night football was likely inevitable. If Midwest hadn't done it, Westville would have, or someone else. Still, the recognition of the accomplishment of almost 100 years ago is there, if you know where to look. But you won't just stumble into it. Not on a highway sign. Not at Moses Field. Not at Midwest Current Field. Not at the school. But a fading sign at the Salt Creek Museum pays tribute to the team and the town that started football as we know it today.